What should a construction contract include? Well, in today's video, we're going to go over the 5 primary components of a construction contract and what you should be looking for in creating and negotiating construction terms. Have you ever wondered what goes into a contract? Who writes a contract? Who gets to decide what stays in a contract? These are things that we're going to talk about in today's episode. We have 5 primary components of a contract that we want to be very clear about when we're establishing a contract. So the first is going to be scope of work. We can't really do anything until it is that we know what we need to do. So developing a very clear, concise scope of work and the deliverable that is expected at the end of the project. This scope of work is going to be able to provide big overall picture of things that we want included in the project, and then the specifications and drawings that we design are going to fill in any of the gaps necessary for us to be able to provide the owner with their expectations of the deliverable for this project. The next thing that we want to know is cost. How much is this project going to cost us? There needs to be an understanding of the feasibility of a project. If our scope of work is so extravagant and so big that it far outreaches the budget that we have to do it, then again, we're already stopped before we start. So knowing and understanding the cost of the project is going to be critical when we're looking at developing that contract. The next thing is time. How much time is this going to take? When does the owner or client need it? When do they have to have it? How much time is it going to take for the contractor to build this project? Have we given them ample time, or have we compressed them into such a short time frame that it's going to cost more money and use more people and potentially impact the quality of our project if we're not careful about allocating appropriate time? So knowing our schedule is going to be very important. Okay, we've understood scope of work is important. We need to know how much it costs. We need to know how long it takes, but we also really need to know who the team is. What are the roles and responsibilities of every stakeholder that's going to be involved in this project? Who's going to be responsible for what? We want people to stay in their own lanes while still having the common sense of needing to overlap in areas in order for collaboration and coordination to occur. Having a clear understanding of the roles and responsibilities of everyone involved and having that in the contract gives us a clear baseline of what is necessary when there are any questions out there. So we can always refer back to the contract if someone has an issue or someone is not sure of whether or not it's their job to get it done. And then number 5. Terms and conditions. Now this is where we refine everything. This is where we put in our own personal touch, our own desire of what needs to be in this contract to make this construction project successful. So terms and conditions could be things like payment terms. So if the contractor knows that they need to have a cash flow going through that particular project, they're going to try to negotiate a shorter payment period. It could be a weekly payment period, a bi-weekly payment period. Being able to include that in the negotiations gives them some control over how they're able to manage their cash flow. Other terms and conditions could include the type of insurance that's required for this particular job. I know that when I've worked on railroad jobs before, there's a special insurance that's necessary for some of those railroad jobs, And just the policy amount for that insurance could eliminate some of the contractors that you have on your list of contractors to perform the work. So knowing and understanding these terms and conditions could end up shaping who ends up taking on the work that you're presenting. Also, in these terms and conditions, we're going to be able to try to minimize the risk on our project. We're going to have an outline of how disputes are handled. Some of that is going to try to detour disputes from even coming up. So whether it's arbitration, mitigation, or in litigation, or where that's going to take place, some of these items included in the contract might make a contractor think twice before submitting a dispute. Nonetheless, we want to make sure that everyone is protected in a project, and so identifying risk mitigation measures in your contract, also identifying those outlines of how a dispute needs to be structured, will be important in the negotiations of moving your project forward and having everyone feel confident that this contract best represents their interest. I would say one of the biggest problems that I see when negotiating or developing contracts is when an owner or client is willing to just sign a contract from the contractor because they haven't taken it upon themselves to hire a lawyer and ensure that they are developing a contract in the best interest of that owner or client. Now, I'm a construction manager, so I do agency CM, so I'm not trying to put the dagger in the back of contractors, but I am telling everyone out there that whoever generates the contract is going to be the one who benefits in the contract. So it is critical to understand that if I'm paying for this contract, I definitely want a contract in place that is going to best protect my interests. So when you're developing a contract and you're working with a construction manager in designing this particular contract, you want to be very specific, very concise, and very clear about the contract and the terms that are being aligned with the project and what the project deliverable is going to require. So every contract is not going to be perfect. Our goal is to make it as perfect as possible. So if you can go through these steps by identifying these 5 primary aspects of creating a contract and use that as your baseline skeleton, then it gives you a really good place to start. As a construction manager, your experience and your lessons learned are going to lead you to more understanding and information of what should be included in a contract. The tighter your contract, the easier your administration of the project is going to be. And so making sure that your contract is exactly how you want it before you sign it is critical when you're trying to put a good contract together. So how well do you know your legal requirements? I would say that everyone in construction is a lawyer, and we have to be very careful about that. Any contract that you go into, you need to know and understand the legal implication of the state that you're in and the type of work that you're performing. So I would suggest that anyone who's going to be signing their life away is the way that you should treat any contract that you're putting your authorization to. So it is so important to know and understand everything about the legal responsibilities for the owner and the contractor before entering into a contract. So when we're understanding the legal implications of a contract and understanding the roles and responsibilities of everyone involved in the contract, we're also going to have a comprehension of the legal relationships between everyone on the construction team. This will be critically important because the contract is going to dictate who you need to listen to and for what reasons. And so as we're developing a contract, we want to make sure that this is presented clearly and concisely, so there is no argument or dispute once the contract gets moving. So we've learned how important scope of work is. We've learned how important it is to know our budget and the time associated with this project. Our stakeholders involved are going to be crucial in the development of our construction project, and identifying their roles and responsibilities in the contract is so important. And where we're going to be able to control and refine our contract is going to be in those terms and conditions. So if you ever thought that it was part of your future of being a construction manager, your knowing and understanding these components of a contract is going to be so incredibly essential. And I would like to be able to mentor you through that process on your journey of becoming a construction manager. So if you look in the description below, you'll find a link for Construction Management Online. I would love to be able to take you to the next step of being the best possible construction manager that you can be.